identify with type 1. How could they do this? This is so wrong. This is against all the rules. It's like, there's not even a question that this is not right. The judge was even saying it wasn't right. The judge was even saying, I wish I didn't have to do this. You're fully rehabilitated. It's on the court record. You're fully rehabilitated more than once. And you have to go to prison. Okay, let me just repeat that. You're fully rehabilitated. And now I'm sending you to prison.
Hi, my name is Clay, and this is Season 3 of the Enneagram Prison Project podcast. In this episode, I sit down for a chat with Sue Lambert, who is an ambassador, among many other things, for EPP, and we're also joined by EPP Founder Susan Olesek. Before we get to that, I'd like to take a second and ask you to take a moment real quick and leave us a rating in the podcast app wherever you're listening to this right now, whether it's Spotify or Apple Podcast or really wherever else you're able to hear this. 1 star, 3 star, 5 stars, whatever's true for you. We'd love to know what you think. We're glad you're here. Thanks for listening. This is the Enneagram Prison Project podcast. You don't mind. Of course, I think most folks will know you've been on the podcast before, Susan. But who else do we have the privilege of chatting with today? Anything that you want to include, let us know.
Oh, great. Sue Lambert. And anything else I'd include is I don't mind the road. Back to the road. I don't mind the road, but I do know my limitations. So as I've gotten older, night, so I just go slower. But I used to go the quickest way to any point is a straight line. So, those curves, let's just cut them this way. Yeah. Let's cut them this way. But
what is your connection to EPP?
Oh, it's actually sometimes I feel like it's just my whole body and heart and head is just probably EPP, just totally absorbed. Both ways. It's EPP's absorbed me and I've absorbed it. So, and I'm an ambassador, and I'm a guide and a faculty member. And, and I'm a life coach and I'm just a human being and a grandma and a mom. And I'm just really lucky to be here in my life right now, guiding. I love guiding more than anything. Love going inside. And that was always my goal when I was inside. I'll never forget the day that I saw Susan wearing that freedom key around her neck. Remember the freedom keys?
The key of freedom. Yep.
Key of freedom.
Bracelets and necklaces.
Yeah. Yep. And I asked her, how do you get one of those? She said, you have to be an ambassador when you become an ambassador. And I already knew I wanted to keep going with EPP, but at that time I really didn't know what my future was. I hadn't been sentenced yet. So,
what year was this?
I started EPP, my first class, I think it was 2015, but I graduated the first class in 2016.
Okay.
And
what do you think an ambassador was at that time?
Well, I think that you told us, if I remember right, that to be an ambassador, you're like a spokesperson for EPP. And what I knew was, I had this vision of someday being able to come back inside to help people. And I also knew that I wanted to, stay connected with EPP because it helped me to, first off, know myself, and to like be a better me. So I just didn't know how that would unroll in the future, but that was my hope back then.
Mm.
Yeah. And the key was nice, but I would have went forward without the key too. The key was nice, and I took the class I think 5 times, and then I was released for a while. And
When was that?
I was released in 2017. Yeah, it had to be 17. And
Like February-ish, somewhere around there?
no, it was right a week before Thanksgiving.
Oh, I had it backwards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
That'll make sense in a second, probably.
and at the time, my attorney told me that I was in there for about like a little over a year and a half. And, at that time, my attorney told me I wasn't expecting to get out, but she let me out on OR and court probation.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you could say what OR means for folks who don't know.
Letting me out.
So like own recognition. I
Right.
can never say it. Reconnaissance.
Yeah.
And trying to put a G in there.
Court probation means that you still have to report to a probation person, but your case is pending.
Mm-hmm.
Something's going on. And in my case, I had a co-defendant that, was fighting everything. And so until his stuff went through, mine just would be on hold. And I think my original agreement of a sentence was 7 years. And, with all the math and everything, how they do it, I was spending my time in jail. And I think they, wanted to have something over my head because they were going to pull me into court to be a witness for him. So, but anyway, that day I got out, my attorney told me that the judge will not put me back in. She's going to let you go. You just have to show her, well, all this time is pending and you're on probation, that you can, tote the line and do what you say you're going to do. And so they had me on a really strict probation. It was weekly. I had to go in weekly, and I had to get alcohol tested every week. And if any of those things, showed any kind of problem, then they'd take that away and put me back.
How far can they test for alcohol? Is it just that day, or can they go back the previous 7 days that were in that whole week?
Well, I had to go every week.
Right. So if you went in on a Friday, how would they know if you were drinking on Tuesday? Or is it even that? Do they even care that much?
I think it must stay in your system somehow, because I'd go on Wednesdays and it was same days, same time. And every time they'd give you a breathalyzer. Yeah.
By the way, I don't know if reconnaissance, the G might be there, Susan. I'm going to check later.
Recognizance.
Yeah, recognizance. Yeah.
Well, you'll notice I sidestepped the word.
Yeah.
Because I'm like,
I wish I
good.
did.
Well, I was asking you because I was going to sidestep the word. So
Recognizance.
even.
I can't.
Yeah.
So
breathalyzer, I can say though. That one I know.
Yeah. And I was like really happy when you said, I'm like, oh. And so I did that. And then it went on forever. The court probation, because the system is very slow. It's especially when someone's fighting something. So with him fighting it, it's like delay. And so I was just back with EPP because I was out and I was getting involved and going to the weekly meetings and taking
You were
taking
crushing
classes.
it.
I was.
You were crushing it.
Well, I couldn't get in. It's like I guess for some people go to like an AA or whatever that just fits in their life, and shows them a different way or whatever. And EPP was that way for me. I mean, it was, I really needed to know it wasn't just the substance abuse or the pill abuse or the the gambling addiction or the food addictions. It wasn't just that. It was why. How do I get out of this mess and stay out of this mess? And I tried AA before, and it didn't work. It didn't work for me. I'd always come up with an excuse, or somebody else would cheat, and then I'd say, "Oh, well, okay, I'll cheat this time, but then I'll start again next week." And so it was just that's a whole different world compared to what I have learned in EPP, because EPP for me is like a way of being. It's a way of living, not just for the moment or the evening or something. It's for always. And I never really understood what transformation work was. So this was all new to me. We were in a class yesterday, Susan and I, and it was the closing. And we were asking what they had learned or what they were taking away. And one of them said that, and he was pointing to some of the posters that we had up. He said, I never knew what any of this was. I've never heard of this stuff, the self-awareness stuff and the things that we were teaching, the pausing, taking a pause, taking a breath, the meditations. It's just like self-observing. And he was like, I never knew what any of these things were until I took this class. And when he said that, it's like, exactly. That was exactly me back then. Had no idea.
And why would you?
Pardon?
Why would you?
Well, I wouldn't, because I had no idea that there was a personality and that it wasn't me.
Right. Nobody's been explaining that for you throughout your life, or mine or yours for that matter, Clay.
Yeah. So, yeah, that was like my rolling into EPP, and I just stayed with it and started going to classes and starting to find out, how I could get through the training to become a guide. And we have this guide training program, and I'm sure you'll remember it, Clay. I don't know if you'll remember the details, but in the first guide training program, I think it was Guide Training Program 1. That's what we called it then. You were there. Was that 1?
I don't know. It depends if you're talking about GTP or even before that, TTP, when we still
TTP.
said teacher.
That was it.
Yeah.
We were at TTP.
Yeah. Well, we had the pilot. We had the first TTP, but before that, we also had the pilot for TTP and
TTT.
Yeah, teacher training program.
Teacher training program. Yeah. That was it. And we were at
Valambrosa.
Yes. And so I was like, oh, I don't know. I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be able to manage all this type information and all these different things. And part of that training was we had to get up on the stage, the little area there, and do our presentation. And
that's always fun, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it's like that was. Actually, you did a great presentation.
You did a great presentation.
Yeah, you actually did a great presentation. Okay, and I don't know if I think you were before me, and it's like, and when it was my time to get up, I got up and I stood there and I cried. I was so, early, young, and then you had said to me, "Well, when did you get out?" And it was only like a year.
It was super recently.
Yeah. And you told me that's why, just too soon, too much too soon. And so, yeah, I just stayed with it. And I so appreciated that holding for me. And it's like I said in our class this week, it's like I've been, when we talk about transformation and change, I've been in those processes for like 60 years. And then I'm learning something new and trying to make new brain patterns and new habits and new ways of doing things. And as I was telling the guys yesterday, it's like it takes time.
Mm.
It takes time to build on these things. And back then I needed more time.
Recently I heard Alex say, I've only been doing this transformation work for 9 years. So really I'm only about 9.
Yeah.
Give me a minute.
It's a fair way to put it.
It is.
I think there's a lot of, especially when you I don't know, there's a certain thing about when you already know how to do something, but you're doing it wrong. The process of not just replacing that, but unlearning the thing that you're doing. And I don't know the psychology behind it. I don't know the scientific way to say it, but I do know that there, for me at least, and from what I know others, there's a certain process that has to exist where I undo before I redo. And it makes sense. Like, it's logical. I wouldn't mind talking to like a neurologist or something about that. Or maybe you know what that is, but it's a thing. And it's totally fair to say that I'm only 9 years into this. So I'm like a 9-year-old. It's a totally fair way to put it. And to be trying to teach in that situation a year or so after being out is just like, not me. Before, I want to ask a question real quick. This has been on my mind for a second. A moment ago, you said to Sue, you were crushing it. And I was hoping that somebody would go into the detail of what that was, because I'm wondering. So now I'm just going to ask you, Susan, what did that look like? It's sometimes it could be, I get complimented and I don't want to talk about it. So I'm not going to ask Sue to tell me how awesome she was, but you, from your perspective, can totally say that. What was the crushing it about?
Well, in so many ways, and I hope you'll chime in, but we've taught thousands and thousands of people our curriculum, over 6,000, I think. And that's just counting people who've finished all of the weeks that we offer the thing. That doesn't count the people that leave in the 7th week or the whatever. And we have 12 ambassadors, right? So it's a big funnel and it's a small number that come out the other end and actually reach back out. That's number one. That's crushing it. That means you value yourself enough to know that you belong yourself into a community. You did that. And then beyond that, to keep saying yes to the things that come, that you'd even stand up in front of all those people and see where you were inside yourself. And then there were other things that really were just incredible. You were working at CEO and you were placing people at different jobs that had recently been released. And
CEO is?
Center of Employment Opportunities.
Okay.
And they're a cool organization. And Sue won a national award for her ability to place people.
Yeah. And that was, well, at the time, EPP was a smaller organization.
Yeah.
And so, that worked out with my continuing my self-work, with ongoing trainings inside EPP, outside EPP, and also putting my time in to eventually be a guide, learning what I could learn. So I had found this organization, CEO, and they were looking for a job developer. And when you get out, there's just, there's not a lot of decent paying jobs around for people when they're released.
Yeah.
And everybody wants to give you the minimum wage job. And a lot of people think you should be thankful that we're offering you that because you have a record.
Warehouse work, cashier work, this work, that work, all the things.
Washing cars,
yeah.
Picking up trash, what have you. And so I had a little bit of business experience. So I applied for the job, and it was another one like EPP, whereas one of the prerequisites for ambassadors is you have to have been incarcerated.
Check.
You're chuckling, but until you've been through this job mill, trying to find a job with this behind you,
CEO has that same requirement.
No.
Oh.
But they're open.
Okay.
And when they say open, they mean open.
Yeah.
Because they see the value in somebody that's working to change their life. They see the value in how that can help other people.
Yeah.
And they're working with people. CEO has a contract with like they're nationwide. There's like 8 branches, and they have a contract with the states they're in to clean the highways. Back to the old cleaning the highway.
Yeah.
But what happens is while the person came out and got connected with CEO, they had job training, different kinds of construction training and things like that to help people get certified in this and that. And while they were doing it, they'd work on the highway program, and then they'd get paid daily, which when you get out, you don't have any money. Right. So if we give you a card and then you go do some work and you get paid daily, then you get to eat and get a hotel if you have to.
Yeah.
So it was a pretty good organization.
Yeah, that is kind of a big deal. I didn't even think about that. But when you get out, there is that, like, when I got a job pretty fast, and I had, in a lot of ways, it was pretty easy breezy for me. And so I missed a lot of the struggles that some folks experience. I got plenty of the ones that everybody experiences, but with the pay, I didn't even think about that. That's a good idea. You can work Monday, get paid Monday.
That's
work
right.
Tuesday, get paid Tuesday.
Right.
And there's no stress of making it 2 weeks or 1 week even for groceries and stuff like that. And I used to know all the numbers behind like employment and how it connected to recidivism. And I don't know those numbers anymore, but I can say just anecdotally that if you don't work, your chances of staying out pretty low. Like if you get out and don't get a job, almost always you go back. And so getting employment is a big deal. And that's cool. I knew a little bit about that organization because I remember you worked for them, but I didn't know that it was quite like that.
And you have a bit of a superpower, I think, of being able to really feel people and where they do well and actually feel where they are, like what they can handle. And I bet that really played into how you were deft at being able to place people where they could make it.
Well, it's a two-sided job. It's like part of the job developer is you go out into the community, into the world, and you go to companies and you present the CEO program and get them to approve hiring people with a history. And so the reason that, there's lots of reasons why that works, but one of the reasons is if that already, if they agree and they, go with the program and they agree that they'll hire people with a background and you talk to them, they may want certain experience or whatever. But the thing is that now you have a person that's dealing with their past, and already the first hurdle has been taken down because now they don't have to go through that difficult question of where have you been the last 10 years?
Yeah.
And we would teach people how to answer that question because we would do mock interviews. We would get people clothing, and we had connections with housing and things like that. It's all about helping when people get out. But that was, and why did I leave? It was rough. They really wanted me to stay, but I had to leave because I got a call from my attorney that said, "Okay, your guy your codependent's all done. You just have to come sign some papers." And so he said, "Come to the court on Friday."
And you've been out for how long?
I'd been out for almost 2 years, and so he said, "Come on Friday." So I let my work know I was going to be over there. And when I just knew when I walked in this courthouse and saw his face that something was wrong. And
this was your lawyer that had you come in.
Yeah. And he says, "Well, there's a problem." He's an older guy. He goes, "Well, there's a problem, but I'm working on it. He goes, "We're going to have to, there's something on the plea agreement that we signed and and I think that we can get it removed. I have to talk to the judge. I'm going to go into the chambers and actually mimic him pretty good. But I mean, because I have to go into the chambers, and he came back and he goes, "Well, there's a problem." He goes, "There was something on your plea agreement that says you have to go to prison." And I said, "Well, wait a minute. You said I was done and that she wouldn't let me out if I had to go back and all this stuff." And he goes, "Well, I missed this. And it means, he said it could be anywhere from 6 months, but to a year. I'm not sure yet. I have to work this out, that you'll have to go to prison." And I was just like shocked. I'm dumbfounded. I mean, What do I say to my job, to the car that I'm making payments on, to the commitments that I have, and the life that I've recreated to be in this world and work so hard for, to get reestablished, because it's so hard for people. I was in there relatively a short time. People with longer times, it's just so hard to get reestablished in the world. And I had done that for myself, and now I had a week. And I'm grateful for that week, to be honest with you, because they could have put me in handcuffs right at that moment and taken me away. And then I had the week to get my business things in order and my life. And I had to go back and turn myself in.
Who's the first person you talked to about that once you left there? Or, call you made or whatever?
The first person I talked to was Susan.
How'd that go?
I mean, it could have been my daughter. They were like right next to each other. It's like, so I couldn't say for sure it was one or the other. I'm pretty sure it was Susan. I was just like dumbfounded that who can understand this better than her, that this system and how something could be so fouled up and how they jerk people around, and that a judge doesn't have the power that I thought they had to say, like you see on TV, well, let's throw this out. It's like, let's do this and we'll do that. It's like, because this was a signed agreement from 2016, the agreement couldn't be changed unless I agreed to throw it out, which meant
you were at risk of
exactly
even more.
New trial.
Yeah.
After I've already spoke about the crime and everything else, and the co-defendant's done his thing and spoke about the crime.
Was the prosecution free to just be like, "Hey, never mind. We don't want to press the issue here"? I mean, it's because it seems to me like, I know Hollywood screws up plenty, so I'm not relying on what I've learned there, but just what I know from gone through plenty of legal processes. It feels like a judge should be able to just say, "Hey, this is like time served" or whatever. It seems it's not. I'm not questioning the validity of any of this. I'm just saying, like, it doesn't seem right that a judge couldn't just be like, "Hey, never mind. Like, you don't need to go back. You've been out. You're doing fine." What the hell?
Well, you couldn't because, that's why we have a supposedly competent attorney.
Yeah.
Because this was an enhancement, and after this, a year or so after this, enhancements got dropped. Except not this enhancement. This enhancement is not one of the ones that got dropped. It's like three of them didn't. 3 felonies didn't. This was one of them. But the thing is that we had a plea agreement in 2016 or early 17, right in there. And it had this enhancement on there. And on the enhancement, it said you have to serve minimum of 6 months in prison. Not jail, prison. Yeah. But my attorney missed it.
Yeah.
And he said it's okay, don't worry about it. It's good, sign it. And handed it to me to sign. And then with him telling me that I was done, you count on that.
Yeah.
And so she couldn't change what was already agreed on unless they threw it out and started over.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, thank you. The DA would not do that.
I can only imagine being in those shoes, and I'd probably call Susan first. And I know what it would sound like from me, because it would be, you're not going to believe this shit. These motherfuckers. Like, I would be enraged. I would just be I'd be like a water hose that somebody just turned on full blast, and I'd just be going around everywhere. And I can't imagine going through that kind of a situation. And I only know that from like my perspective, what I would probably do. And I'm going to ask a nosy question and just say I'm curious what the call sounded like, or what was it like? Was it easy? Was it, because like life is changing at that point, and people, by the way, to the listener who says, well, it's only 6 months. Fuck all that. It's a long time, first of all, if you've never been, much less if you've been out and going back in. It's a big deal. So I'm dismissing on your behalf. I'm dismissing anybody who says that is check yourself, because that's 6 months is a big deal. Minimum 6 months is a big deal. Up
One
to 2
day
years
is a big deal.
Yeah. I mean, we have folks who struggle to go back in as a guest. Like it's not a good place to be. Hey, y'all, it's Clay. I'm going to pause here real quick to share a few words of appreciation for EPP's Executive Director, Rick Olesek. Now, Rick is absolutely one of my favorite people on the planet, and I don't know who else I would even put in that list, but he is definitely on the list. Early on in my Enneagram journey, I don't like to admit this, but I'll just say with full transparency that I really struggled with type 7. And I don't know if that's because I'm a type 5 or something else that's going on. Not my dilemma to solve at this moment, but I'll tell you that I really struggled in particular with this idea that joy is important, that options are a big deal. And I looked at type 7 very judgmentally in my own struggles to understand why it is that those things were important. And one of my favorite memories with EPP, with Rick, and life in general is back in 2013 when we went to Denver to the IEA conference there. It was the first time that we had really kind of presented EPP to the world, I guess. And it was a big deal. We were on panel. It was myself, Susan, another ambassador named Elam. And after that experience, I was so drained, and I was not prepared for how tired and nervous and anxious and just really energetically drained I would be. And I just needed to leave. I needed to go somewhere. And of course, I'm in another town without a car. And Rick said, hey, let's just go for a drive. And he had a suggestion of where to go, who to be with, and all these options and all these things to do. And I'll tell you, it played a major role in me being able to just survive that weekend because I was so ill prepared for going and just giving myself to that many people. And it was at that moment in that weekend where I realized, oh, this is one of many things that we can love about type 7. And then also me personally, this is a new friend of mine. And this is somebody who I knew previously. It's not that I just didn't know who he was, but I really made a friend that weekend. And here we are a decade plus later. I can say that our friendship has only grown. I appreciate the hell out of Rick. He is just one of my favorite people, my favorite ride from the airport, my favorite sports, fan to sit and watch a game with, my favorite person to just talk on the phone with about nothing and everything. And I don't know where we'd be without folks like Rick, and without Rick specifically. He's a hell of a guy. I love him to death. And here are a few other folks who would like to tell you a few things about how they experience Rick Olesek.
What I super appreciate about Rick Olesek, what's just completely coming up in my heart and body right in this moment, is his gentleness. Like I sit and I watch Rick juggle so many balls and do so many things. And he'd come up with list 500 computer programs that I've never heard of and how they could help EPP and connect people from here and there and everywhere. And think about money and organization and spreadsheets and committees and circles. And then every single time, bring it back to the heart of why we do this work, the heart of every single person he's talking to. When I come up with one of my big ideas, like, oh, let's do this and we could do that. And he's right away thinking like, not just who needs to be talked to make it happen, but how people feel about it. And so absolutely one of the things I appreciate about Rick is his huge, big brained connectedness that he brings to everything that he does. But really deep down, what like touches me and inspires me about Rick is the gentleness and heartfulness and hope. Rick wants to change the world, and he wants to create an entire scaffolding to help others change the world with him. It is such a beautiful quality. I want to give him a big hug right now.
I'm so grateful that I get to appreciate Rick. He does not get enough credit. No matter how much credit he gets, he's not getting enough credit. He is in all the spaces, doing all the things, always pitching in. I mean, night or day, he's getting back to us. And Rick really has this beautiful quality of listening from all angles and synthesizing the information that's being said in a way that is easy to understand. And he always gives these sweet sport metaphors that I completely can't comprehend. And I think he can see the look on my face. And then he gives me another one that I can comprehend. And he's just full of them in the most beautiful way. And I think Rick, amongst other sevens in EPP, but I think Rick has really taught me. I think he's really taught me how much heart sevens have, how much heart as head types we can access inside of ourselves, because my bias is to think that I can't access my own heart. So it's inspiring and contagious in the best way to be with Rick and experience his heart and his care. How quickly he'll go to his tears in the most beautiful way and just own them. Rick, appreciating the hell out of you for all that you do, but also how you be. Thank you so much. EPP would not be what it is without you. And I mean that in a million ways.
What I appreciate about Rick is his accessibility to all of us. Rick has a busy calendar if you've ever wanted to get on it, but it's always open somewhere, and he welcomes any call that I've ever tried to have with him, even just to sit and have coffee together on Zoom. That is amazing accessibility for someone who wears so many hats and has so much to do within this organization, more than I probably even know about. So I do appreciate that. Also, I appreciate that Rick is present for 15 minutes when we have those calls, or however long they are. I think that's amazing that someone can stop the busyness and be that present to anything. Knowing that Rick is a man who wears lots of different hats in EPP, I appreciate that when I am out with him, he laughs a lot and brings a joyful presence, making me want to lighten up. And I know this is very true of my type 7 friends, but Rick possesses that like Rick does. So that joy, the laughter, and the accessibility, that's my appreciation at the moment in my heart, mind, and body for Rick Olesek.
This class that we taught over the weekend was really hard to get the men's attention because there was a glass window between us and the general population that was out there in rec time. And it took all of our energy, mine and Susan's, I think, to hold the class for the last 2 days. And when we heard that Rick was coming, it was like, oh my God. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so happy. We're going to make it. We're going to make it because we have Rick coming. And it's like that energy that he brings and that he could absorb. He could be like the shock absorber. We need a break. Be there for us. But the thing is like, Rick's like that with everything. I see him like that when I'm at that point. Rick is always there for me to be like the shock absorber that helps me lighten up and to see the light, see the positive and all that. And I love that so much about him. I love him.
Rick has been a huge part of my growth over the past several years. We work so closely together and sharing the same type structure is often more of a mirror than I even want. but I'm so grateful for it. I think one of the biggest things he's taught me is grace. He has a way of helping me understand I don't need to hold all the weight I hold and the pressure that I often feel on wanting to do well and support everybody around the project. And he holds so much, and he holds all of it with grace. And he is also such a safe place for me to process when I'm really struggling. And I just know I'm so safe in that space. I've learned so much from him on my personal development as well as professionally, and so appreciate the way he be. Rick, you are wonderful, and I'm grateful for you and the way you support the project and the way you support me.
I remember the first time I met Rick. He was on panel inside Santa Clara County Jail. And he came up all smiles and just felt like this giant ball of goodness and joy. And I was like, I want some of that. Whatever he's got going on, that's what I want. I want that too. And then the panel started, and I heard him share some really tender stuff, some precious moments to him. And I was just like, wow, he is just like me. Or he shows up another way, but on the inside, he's dealing with stuff just like me. And it felt like a whole nother connection inside of my mind was made just from witnessing him. And I'm so appreciative of that, and of the way that Rick's able to show up and hold so much and so much space. And there's been times on other places where I've been in places with him, and I'm reactive and I'm pissed and I want this and I want that. And then I hear Rick speak, and I'm like, oh yeah, but I don't have to be like that. And my way is not the only way. And to see all the different possibilities and all the different perspectives. And Rick gives me so much insight in those areas, and in a lot of ways grounds me in so many different places that I'm just able to continue to learn and grow from witnessing Rick and how he shows up. And I'm so inspired by that. I hold that very dear to me. And I'm so grateful for you, Rick. And I'm so grateful for all the work you're doing and all the places you are. And I'm so, so grateful that you're able to not see things black and white all the time, like how I like to show up. And I just really want to wish you such an amazing day and a happy birthday. And I'm so, so happy to be in this community and doing this work with you. So thank you, Rick.
When he did come in, it's not the Tigger that other people might have in mind. Even if you've met Rick, he can be like Tigger. The wonderful thing about Tigger. Tiggers are wonderful things. It's more that Rick came in with some real gravitas, and he sat down and he was really grounded from the get-go. And he knew that there was a lot of dysregulation in the classroom. So he kind of, had that heads up. And when he comes like that, he can, it's a good word, Sue, he can absorb, and he can also reflect. We did a breakout and we gave him one of the quietest guys in the room just to see what Rick might be able to do. And he when they finished, Rick was like, oh, I really liked him. And of course he would really like him. Of course he would see the light in him. And I've had the privilege of being with Rick since he was 24 until now. And we've been able to watch each other grow. And I think a good 3 to 5 times a week, we stand somewhere in this house and hold each other and say, I'm so lucky to go through life with you. I'm so I'm so lucky that my partner loves what we do together. I mean, how many people get to say that? He is such a special soul. And it makes me really happy that other people see that.
I want to hear more about when you got out after that and what it was like getting out a second time, I suppose. Did you know the actual date you were getting out for a while, or was it just
No.
like they surprised you one day?
Just surprised me one day.
Hey, go get out of here.
Yeah, I think they
That's
told me the day
weird.
they did. I think they told me the evening before because my daughter drove down to get me, and she drove that day to come get me. So, well, that was nice walking out those gates, and that part is just like the movies, the guy up above me up in the tower, like with his shotgun thing, and me like saying, so long. And
That's so much nicer and a different hand gesture, by the way, than I would have done.
Yeah, it's like, so long. And the first thing we did, we went to In-N-Out Burgers.
Everybody remembers the meal.
We did. We went to In-N-Out Burgers, and I could hardly eat it. It was just like too much, too fast. And I was just so happy to be there with her and hold her and touch her. And we came home, and she was just her wonderful self. And I called Susan. The moment I got in the car and I got her phone, and I called you, and you put me on speaker, I think, and the celebration, the relief that I didn't die in there, and then I came home, and I think my daughter took me to Walmart, and that was shocking because some of the things they sell on commissary or at Walmart, and on Walmart that would be 99 cents, and on commissary that's like $9.99.
Yeah.
So
but for the listener, that's not an exaggeration.
No.
Ramen noodle soup on the inside at some of the places where I was would be like $1 for a package.
That's right.
And then out here at Walmart, you can get a case for $3.24 or whatever it was at the time.
Exactly right.
It's a ridiculous markup.
Well, that's another whole podcast, because if we get into the money making of prison, that's like another whole unbelievable.
Yeah.
But
so you go to Walmart, the food's way
go
cheaper.
to Walmart, do this, that, and I settle in, and then I start the steps of trying to get my identification. But nobody wants to give you identification unless you have identification. And where have you been the last 6 months? And what is this going on? So then it's the chase of paper. And it's funny. It's like, and I've heard this from more than one person, that inside prison, they actually meet with you, and we're going to make this easier for you. We're going to get this information from you. We'll have this ready for you. And then they have nothing ready for you. And so you're out there. So trying to gather all this up. But I will never forget that everybody was so kind, that are close. The people I talked about, my daughter, my son-in-law, EPP, and it was during the faculty retreat. I think it was. Faculty was here, and I came down here. Wasn't sure how that was going to be, but I came down here. I don't know, was I even on faculty then? No, I wasn't on faculty then. But they invited me down, and I was here, and Rebecca was here doing some work. It might have been some kind of other meeting. But Rick, Susan, putting my arms on her and putting my arms around her and touching her live, and it's like the feeling of safety. The feeling of safety, and I'm home. I'm safe. This is reality. I'm here today. Was there yesterday. It's just a lot of adjustment. EPP, of course, Susan and Rick. When I say EPP, I always think of Susan and Rick. And Rick came up to me and took me into the other room and set me down on the couch. I don't know if you even saw that, Susan.
I don't remember this.
He took me up above and he set me down on the couch and he got kind of kneeled down on the floor and he put his hand on my hand and he said, Sue, how are you? And I answered him and he said, I don't want you to do anything you don't want to do. I want you to pick what you want to do in EPP and do what you want to do. You know, not what you think you have to do or to do this and to do that. He goes, I just want you to know that it's all okay. Everything's going to be fine. And I want you to be able to pick and choose what you want. And it was like, that was like so kind. It was like when we were just learning about teal. And it was just so kind to have that kind of holding and no pressure and just giving me that space. It was, and that meant so much to me. That meant so much to me. What EPP helped me through that whole ordeal, and then coming back to that was, yeah. And I chose to not go back to CEO and stay with EPP and continue on my path to become a guide. And I'd already started that path. So I know it's hard to believe, but when I was out before I had to go to prison, I had already done some apprenticing in San Bruno jail. So I'd already started it because, I know this is complicated, but because I wasn't sentenced yet, if you ran my name, I wouldn't have a record when I was on court probation for that year and a half or 2 years.
Because it wasn't a conviction.
Right.
Ah. So you could get in pretty easily.
Yeah.
Huh.
See?
How convenient.
So here I am. I'm telling you. Here I am, a felon, right? And all this stuff that's not supposed to be able to go in. But because it was hung up with this
You're not a felon
stuff,
yet. You weren't a felon yet.
Yeah, I wasn't.
Yeah.
So I got into San Quentin. I got into every place because I was on court probation. Nothing was on the records. And I got to start like my co-guiding in San Bruno jail with Dana and Susan for like 3 months and off and on. And it worked out. It worked out. And so, but now I'm convicted. And so now when I go back into the same places that let me in, do you see how bizarre this all is? Like I'm okay to go in over here. Then, she's rehabilitated, but she's got to go to prison. Okay, she does. Now she's out of prison, but now she's a convicted felon. So now the places we approved her for before, we can't let her in. Mm-hmm. There's something unsafe about her. Crazy. Or something. I don't know. But anyway,
almost like it doesn't make any damn sense.
Almost.
It's almost like we don't have it figured out here in the land of the free. Don't get me started.
Don't get you started. But you know what?
Please say words so I stop.
I look at it this way. Sometimes it's very frustrating when I think of all that, but I am like the first ambassador that was able to go back inside and teach or guide. And I feel like I'm kind of setting a pathway for ambassadors behind me to come, because I've written the award and letters, and I've gone through the paces of all the different things and question things that came up that like set me aside from some other guide to find out why I'm being treated differently than that guide. And so I kind of look at it, it's like it's setting a path for people to come behind me. Because, I'm 73, like, right? This year, 73. So hopefully I'll be here a long time.
You are not just setting a path, you're blazing a trail, I think. Yeah. And this week has been especially like that. I spent the last, we were joking when she came in the door. I was like, you tired of me yet? It's been the last 4 days straight, literally, with each other in the jail on Friday. I'm not stealing any thunder. You tell them what you were doing on Friday.
Oh, on Friday, well, before I leave the blazing trail, I want to ask you a question, Clay. You did the TTP training and all that. And why aren't you guiding?
I feel like I'm in a parole board hearing now. Like, this is the way this is set up. I made a mistake.
Busted.
Yeah. Hey, and I'll talk about it.
His face is turning red.
Oh, it's funny. Yeah. No, I'm fine. I'll be right back though. I got it. No. It's actually there's a few reasons actually. One of them, because I went through all the training.
Right.
Even before we had training, I'd gone through. So I actually went all the way to the end to where all I had to do was submit my packet. It's like, it's the easiest homework ever. And I just didn't. And part of that I will gladly share publicly, and then the rest I won't. The part that I don't mind saying is that there was a lot of pressure that I put on myself. This is just what should happen. I went to prison. I learned this on the inside. Of course I should give back by being a guide. We didn't say guide yet. We still said teacher. And like, it was almost like an automatic thing that I just assumed was how it should be. And so I went along with it because of the should have. And there was a point where I started thinking, like, am I doing this because I want to? Am I doing this because I should do it? Or am I obligated some other way? And that coincided with also, I'm the first in a lot of categories with EPP. And I kind of wanted to just not be the first for it was totally possible that I could have been the first in like years and years of categories of whatever. I just didn't want to do that. And I kind of wanted to get out of the way. And none of those things are a single reason for why I'm not a guide. They all just kind of work together. And actually, I don't mind sharing this publicly. I was going to keep this to myself. And if I change my mind later and edit it out, that's fine. The process of being certified, I found myself not agreeing with it and the way that went about certifying folks. And I felt like I got a lot of freebies in a lot of ways. And when you're, we know this, like as an ambassador of EPP, you get, there's a certain privilege about that. And I am aware of that. And I didn't want that. And I don't think that others have taken advantage of it. For me, it was just a personal thing where I was like, I actually wasn't sure of myself to where I thought I could earn it. And I didn't want to doubt whether or not I earned it. And I didn't want to ever think that it was just given to me. And that's a big part of it. The other stuff I said about not wanting to be the, first for all these, for everything, that's part of it. And then also, I don't have a desire to guide. I love the things that I do. I love going in as an ambassador. I love sitting alongside guides in class. And I love representing the group that we're trying to reach. And I love all that. And I think that there's a limit to how much we can do. And I don't think that I don't have the desire. And I also don't think that I have the space, I guess, to do that. I don't want to go through GTP. I've been through it on this side as an ambassador, and I've helped, and I've put in the hours. I mean, I've it's not a matter of time. Like, I've put in the time that folks have put in, but it's different. And I don't I don't want to do that. It's hard to an extent that I'm not willing to do that yet. And maybe that'll change. It's not a permanent, screw that, I'm never doing it. It's just right now, as we sit in 2023, I don't see that being something that I want to do. And maybe it changes next year. Who knows?
I love the possibilities that you always bring when you share like that. And it's like there is an intelligence there of the noticing that the expectation the expectation that you could even notice that, and then even know that you always have the option if you decide to. It's like that's the possibilities that you bring. And I notice that you bring that a lot when we're in our ambassador meetings too. It's like, I love the possibilities that sometimes my mind is like not even thinking that not even there. And so I totally respect all that so much. And so thank you for sharing.
Thanks for asking. Thanks for putting me on the damn spot.
It's a little Clay Tumey she pulled on you.
It's fun though. No, and I encourage people do that. It's so much more enjoyable for me to exist in a conversation like that where I might get hit with something. Because to me, that's what the podcast is really about. It's not about, and like I said earlier, it's not an interview. I'm not here to extract information. I just want to have a conversation with people and I think other folks would want to hear that. And so it's nice. So, I mean, to anybody listening to this who might be on a future episode, do what Sue just did. Like, feel free to throw that out there. And I always have the freedom to just not answer. And I don't feel obligated to answer. And I also like to answer questions. It's fun. To me, that is a larger part of what I experience in my role as an ambassador is just talking through things that I experience. So that's cool. I dig it.
I dig it. You dig it?
I dig it
All
too,
right.
for the record.
I have a question because you mentioned this a couple times earlier, and this doesn't, I guess, matter to the bigger story, but I'm curious, so maybe it does. How's your car doing? What's the car that you mentioned about not being able, whatever became of the car that you had when you went back in?
A friend of mine, through EPP, helped me actually and gave me a loan. And I'm happy to say I paid back every penny. But he gave me a loan to cover my car payment, my insurance that I had to have because I have a loan on the car, my storage unit. He covered my bills for 7 months.
Wow.
I gave him, he asked me and I gave him the figure and he covered my bills. And then as soon as I got out, I got on a payment plan and he was just so generous with the payment plan. And I paid him off and, yeah.
So you didn't lose your car?
Did not lose my car. And I paid for that. I put a down payment on it and everything. So it's like I had money into it. And I'm like so fortunate that was the case because it made starting over again not so hard.
Yeah.
To get out and have a car with the insurance. And it's like, so, yeah.
It's a pretty big deal. Is that the car you're still driving?
Yeah.
So I can see it out in the driveway.
It's 2016 or 17.
Pretty blue.
But thank you. I wanted blue. It's a Nissan Rogue.
Yeah.
Not too big. It's small enough. I wanted something that I can make sure I can take my grandkids to and from school.
Yeah.
So
it's perfect for that.
Yeah.
It's got space in the back. I've never owned one, but I've driven tons of them as a rental. I like them quite a bit. Yeah, we're talking about cars on the EPP podcast. Yeah. There you go.
A little car talk here.
Yeah. I also have the urge to just say something about, and I hope it's appropriate, but I actually get irritated when folks talk about quote unquote rich people and how selfish they are and stingy. And I have, through EPP, I've met so many people who they got a lot more zeros behind their name than I do in terms of what they have in the world wealth wise. Mm-hmm. And my experience has been so opposite of what people say, and the generosity that I've experienced from some of those folks. It's pretty outrageous. And I get a little irritated when I hear people out in the wild talk about rich people, because they just have there's this, I don't know, stereotype. And I don't know. I haven't experienced that.
I mean, wealthy people who are good people are looking for good places to put their money to use.
Yeah. And you remind me that the way that you said that is, I can more succinctly say what I think is, I genuinely believe that inside of all of us is it's a ball of goodness looking for a place to happen. And I think that is absolute across the board. Doesn't matter who you are, what you did, none of that stuff. I genuinely believe that all of us have that inside of us, just looking for a place to happen. And it's a struggle for some of us more than others, but I think that it still exists, whether I'll just say absolutely across the board. I think that's a thing. So yeah. Anything else? Anything coming up for you, or any thoughts or questions? You've been just kind of chilling.
I honestly feel like I'm just on the couch here enjoying two people I love so much chop it up about something that's so important. And to riff off of what you were just sharing, Clay, I'm glad you don't want to be a guide, because if you were, you might not have a podcast going on here, right? I mean, not everybody has guiding on their heart. It's not the whole thing of what EPP is. And it was so small, like you said, when you went to prison, Sue, and we're a whole lot bigger now. There's a lot to do. So I'm glad that you live into your gifts. And this is a precious conversation. It's been a long time coming.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful to be a witness to it. So I don't need to get in there. I'm enjoying myself.
I'll say a few folks that I've told about, I'm going to California. Oh, have we said yet where we are? Did we talk about that earlier?
In my house with the dirty windows.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. We did say
the cloud. That was a cloud floating by, I thought.
Nice try.
I did.
So I mentioned to a few folks I was coming out and going to be recording the podcast, which is a conversation I have frequently because people enjoy it and they want to know who I'm talking to. And I've so far, everybody that I told that I was going to come out and that you were going to be on the podcast, there was a reaction of, oh, well, there's excitement, and then there's also like, oh, y'all are going to sit and talk, and this hasn't always. I'll just say the uncomfortable thing hasn't always been an option, to sit and chit chat, and I'll say, and it's nobody's damn business anything. I'm just saying that's a real thing, and I've enjoyed this quite a bit, and we can go there if you want. I'm not saying that it's off the table, but I've enjoyed quite a bit sitting and chatting with you and hearing from you.
Yeah, doing personal work is always they're always a surprise. It's like always a surprise. And yeah, there was a period of time where we would grind a little bit in ambassador meetings or whatever, and it would be like a little bit of grinding that would go on, and withdrawing. And and when we say these things that we do in EPP, like we do the work together conversations, what all this has brought for me is that if you have two people that want to work on their differences, whatever that may be, they have to be able to be present to their own reactivity. And for a long time, when it came to you, I was not. I was really stubborn. Like, and I don't know if you were, but I was more like...
oh, I can own that. Yeah. I'm not easy. I'll put it that way.
It's like, I was just more stubborn. And so, look, I had a sabbatical last year, and these pieces of work that we do, we think, oh, gee, I've been doing this work for 5 years. I must know everything about myself. And then, we get these it's like the law of 7, you get these like cha-chink, like a kink in the armor and in the chain. And it's like, I had reached a point where I just needed to take time off. And so I had some appointments with to do some more work with Marion Gilbert. And I really wasn't sure what to expect. I thought that I didn't like do a lot of research on this. It's like, I thought she was like a yoga person. And so I'm like, oh God, I hope I could do this when I get. So I started working with her, and what she helped me to do was do something that I talk about now, but I never talk about the history, but it was some inner work that had to do with embracing my anger. I'm like, who would ever even thought of that? It's like when she started talking to me about this, it's like, well, we had done some work with myself, but my inner self prior to that. But then when we brought in the anger, we progressed into bringing in the anger. There's something inside me that changed. It was a time that I was able to say to myself that I can have room for my anger too and embrace it. And wait a minute, this isn't so bad. There is room for my anger. And so with that, a whole bunch of projection and reactivity just kind of melted off my shoulders. And during that time, I was also thinking about you and not just you, but, life and relationships, and knowing we had the rift and realizing that I love Clay. I've always loved Clay. It's like, why is this rift even happening? Right. And so it was a lot of being able to see my whole part of it and saying, there's nothing more important than being able to rekindle the connection. And anger has no place there, or frustration or anxiety about it or whatever. So I was able to just let it go. It wasn't about proving a point or who was right or who was wrong or anything like that. It was about healing for me. And then it was just a lot of things for me changed.
It's been noticeable. And I'll say, by the way, for the record, I love you back. I'm glad to be in this work with you. And the last, 6 months maybe since you came back, just sabbatical concluded around October-ish.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So as we talk here, we're in March. So I think the last 6 months, our interactions have been noticeably better. And I think it's a mutual decision that we are on the same team. I'm down, and it ain't always easy. Sometimes I'm an asshole. Like, I'm not easy to deal with sometimes. Like, people know that. It's not a surprise to hear that. And I think, I almost think it doesn't matter. I think that the number one thing that matters the most in relationship of any kind is that I'm down to do the work. You're down to do the work. So do the work. And sometimes it's bumpy. And it's okay. It's okay. Bumps are okay. All good. And I said this. I don't remember where I said this. I feel like I said it to you, but I'm not sure. I was nervous about today. I don't get nervous for podcasts. I've been on record for most of my life. And I was nervous about today. Actually, without even really being able to define it fully. And I think really what it is that it's real easy to talk about. We do the work together. It's easy to say all the things, and for me, it's easy to trick myself into thinking I believe something. And so anytime I have to go into a situation where I have to check myself or test myself to see if I really buy into this, it's nerve-wracking. I don't like it. And it makes me nervous. So I care greatly about the work that we do as an organization. And also I care greatly about the podcast and what people hear. And I wish we'd done this sooner. It's appropriate that we did it now. So it's no regret attached to it, but I do wish that we'd have chatted sooner. And my definition of crushing it, to steal a phrase that you used earlier, is that someone is just willing to show up and put in the work and try. And I've experienced so much of that from you in the last 6 months that I can't possibly quantify it. It's a big deal. And I appreciate it a lot. And I think I'm better for it personally. I think EPP is better for it just across the board. And it's nice. It's nice to see. It's good having you.
Oh, thank you.
I love you both so much. And this might be one of my favorite episodes already.
Always work to do.
There's always work to do. And it's there for the doing, but it's still an uncommon proposition. People really take it up. And it seems so simple. Maybe it seems simple to be listening to the two of you. It's not. Forgiveness is not for the other person, right? It's for ourselves. And something really mysterious seems to happen, and you've been putting your finger on it throughout this conversation, Sue, about how something just kind of melts away. If we can just thread the needle and stay present to it, something changes. And it's a guarantee. But it's such a hard thing to define because it isn't an efforting, yet it is a tremendous amount of work. It's like when we've peeled away the onion enough, like you were able to describe so precisely with Marion, then the anger's okay. And it's really hard to believe that in a personality ego state. For type 1, it's really hard to believe that there's any good that can come of anger. But if you just make room, and she's so expert at helping people to do that. So I love that you took the time, because it was a choice. You had a lot on your plate, a lot going on, and to choose to step away into something that was completely undefined and fill it with more spaciousness. That's what allowed that to happen. And I know you don't mess around, Clay. And I knew that when this podcast was going to happen, that the shift had already happened. And I'm just glad that we can talk about it here, because who the hell is EPP if we can't do what we say? And we can.
I agree. This feels like a good place to, I won't say stop. I'll say pause, because we'll do this again sometime if y'all are down. I want to give y'all each, it's always weird to say the last word when it's two people, but another moment to share whatever. And there's still no limit on time, but I think we're coming to the conclusion. And before that, I want to say thanks. Thanks, Susan, for opening up your house, aka the podcast's unofficial EPP podcast studio.
The Frosted Window Palace.
Yeah. And yeah, that is funny. Maybe it is frosted. Maybe it's not dirty. But thanks for letting me come out and stay and just be here and record this. I appreciate it. And
anytime.
It's fun. And Sue, thank you. Thanks for being down. And I think that the words that you shared here, the stories that you've shared, are going to shine a light on some things that folks didn't know that they even had an issue with, in a good way. I'm there's a lot of people who listen, but to me, the number one listener is my mom, just because that's how I'm wired. And I'm really excited for my mom to hear this. It's the first episode of the new season, and I think she's going to love it. And I think everybody else is going to love it. I'm glad you shared yourself with us today. I appreciate it. So first, Susan, I would like to ask, Is there anything you'd like to share? I have dozens of hours of recording space, so there's no rush. But I'm going to mute my mic and not say much else here.
We have a new video that we recorded of all the ambassadors congratulating people who are finishing the class. And we asked them, just remember what it was like for you when the class finished that very first time, those first 8 weeks or 12 weeks, whatever you took. And can you speak some words into that moment for students who are sitting there on the inside? And we've recorded that. And this past weekend, I got to watch that video in the class that I was co-guiding with Sue. And there were so many cool things that happened in that class. First of all, just to be in that space with you. Sue and I could go anywhere for any length of time. We love each other so much, and we're very, very easy together. I feel like we back clean up for each other in different spaces, and it was just delightful. And on that video, I think it's you, Clay, who says, graduation is not completion. Like, just because you graduate doesn't mean you're all done with the work. My God, if only. And Vic says on that, when you get out, it's harder. And I'm sure describing what you were just describing about sitting in Chowchilla, like, what could be harder? But actually the work is aptly named. It's very, very hard to let go of knowing or being right or all these egoic stances that we have. And that's what we ask. And that's what we congratulate people for signing up for. Really, it's like just the beginning of the next thing. And it was momentous to be in that class because we both signed our names on a certificate for other people who, I signed so many certificates for your class. And we just been coming off of this last moment. I just want to include this because it's so much a milestone for EPP that the Friday before, I got to come into the class that Sue is co-guiding with Jennifer, and Judge Lee, who was the judge who sentenced you, came in, and she brought that letter that you'd written to her with her, and she marked the growth that she saw a long time ago. She marked how she watched you changed when you were inside, and brought the letter that you'd written to her upon your release. And she said how proud of you she was. And she said it not just for you, but for all the students that were watching. And everybody's watching Sue, thinking, I wonder if I could be that. And she lingered after the class with one guy who was really overcome, and he was super tender. And she spent all this extra time with him. And I just want people to know, who are listening, who are up against themselves, that there are real exemplars of people who have done this. And there's always somebody who's had it harder than you, but there's never a better moment than the one that you're aware of to actually take a step closer to yourself. And it's possible. And I feel so honored to be sitting at this table of people who like scooted on up to the real and are doing exactly that. And I just got mad respect for you being first female ambassador. That's one first you couldn't have been. And to stick around all this time, man, just how lucky are we?
Thank you. It has been quite a journey, for sure, and quite the last 4 or 5 days. Having the judge that convicted me. There's something about that judge when she speaks. It's not intenseness, but in a way it is. It's like she's very precise with her words, and I noticed when I was getting sentenced, my focus was on her mouth, just because the way she moves her mouth and pronounces her words, it's like very well thought through, of course. And when she was in the class, I was watching her mouth again. And this time her words, when she pulled this letter out of her purse that I had written her when I got out of prison, and talking about how my plan was to work with EPP and be in service to helping people, and that if I could just help one person, that to help them change their lives, that, that was my purpose. And I started crying. I was fine up until that point, but it was her having the letter with her that really touched me, that, she would have that. And so as we do this work and we try to help other people and help ourselves, it's like I have this space right now, and it's like it's just remembering the people that have supported me and helped me on this journey with the EPP and with myself. And it's like it's been like a never ending gift. And it's like I'm enjoying this podcast and being able to be here, and I have this like burning trust with you, Clay, that it's like I want your hand. It's like, touch me. It's like I just have like this burning touch of like trust, and it's something that I always wanted, and to have it now, it's just like another gift. And being with you all weekend and having you on Friday, it's more gifts. And graduating the classes, just more gifts, and listening to the men when they say they're closing, what they're taking with them after like the frustrating 2 days and all the distractions. It's like knowing that they're taking that. It's just more gifts. And so in that way, that's the wealth of me. That's the wealth of, I am a very wealthy person in those gifts, and those are the most important to me. So thank you for today. Thank you, Susan, and thank you.
For more information about EPP, please visit EnneagramPrisonProject.org. We appreciate your time and attention today. Please stay tuned for future episodes of the podcast, which you can expect right here on the first Tuesday of every month, as we continue to tell the story of the Enneagram Prison Project.